CSS was formed in 1939 and uses innovative programs, direct services, litigation, and applied research to advance policies that address economic disparities. The organization will move to new Midtown headquarters in the fall. CEO David Jones spoke with us recently at the agency's original offices.
Hi, I'm David Jones. I'm President and CEO of the Community Service Society of New York. Basically, CSS is going through its own transformation now. We've grown almost by a third. We've taken over the role of the navigator and helper for people under the ACA, the Affordable Care Act, not only for New York City, but the rest of the state. It's led to an enormous expansion of our staff and new responsibilities for the agency. Basically, CSS is going ahead and setting up relationships with other not-for-profits all through the state. It trains and supervises not-for-profits we've never met before to make sure the best quality health care is available for people throughout the state of New York. Well, CSS is going through a major shift. Our entire offices, we've been here since 1892. We're now going up to 40th Street and 3rd Avenue, taking over a floor there. We're dealing with a significant growth in staff and a much bigger budget. But we're also dealing with critical policy issues that are emerging, particularly in issues of low-income housing. We've been issuing reports on the New York City Housing Authority, trying to help them through this new transition of trying to stabilize them. Well, I think one of the reasons I got into this work, basically I grew up in Bedford-Stuyvesant in central Brooklyn. My father was one of the first African-American assembly people in the state of New York. We were sort of well prepared. This was in a segregated Brooklyn at the time I was growing up. The difficulty I see, and the reason I do this work so much, is so many people got left behind. As I return to the streets where I grew up, so many young people are in much worse condition when they were, even in the 1950s, in a segregated Brooklyn, and that's not fair. The lack of equity, the losing ground of people who didn't have the wherewithal to get solid education and financial base is not within the American dream. I think it's our obligation of everyone, but particularly myself, to try to redress that problem. I think we have to fight. One of the reason poor people and people without means get into this position is the lack of political influence. And this notion that you have to mobilize, and CSS, unlike most not-for-profits, aggressively urges people to both unionize and also register to vote, and vote people out who are not serving their interests. And I think that's one of the central tenets that makes CSS somewhat different than other not-for-profits. I think many people confuse not-for-profits as if this is sort of a social good, where people do this for the goodness of their heart, and they do. We, however, have to hire professionals to make sure our audits are clean, to make sure our finances are intact, and to make sure the levels of service are of the highest quality. And I think when you start to lose that fact and not recognize that we are running a business proposition which in some ways is much more regulated than the for-profit world, then you can understand how this has to be done. And I think that's part of again, what we want to tell other people who want to form not-for-profits and also run not-for-profits. I believe what I start to tell younger CEOs all the time, since I've been at this a long time, pay attention to the finances first of all. Vision is great, and I think we all enjoy our visionary effort, but if you don't have a solid foundation, financial foundation, it's a wreck. And that's been seen again and again within the city of New York as more and more not-for-profits fall apart and not only injure their staffs, but more importantly, the constituents they serve. I couldn't have a job that sort of moves and changes as much as this one. We're not fixed at one job. We're watching what's happening to people, the working poor, people of moderate means, and their needs, and we're eager to start meeting those challenges as they come along. And it sort of gets you out of bed every day with excitement that you can make a real difference in the lives of people who really need help, but also you can help empower them to do what needs to be done. A lot more people go into not-for-profit work. Having been a corporate lawyer, for many years. This is the best job I could imagine.